this is Peaches. I'm back with the Enigma of the Female Nerd, and if you didn't catch the first part, you can catch it in the link below. So today's topic is going to be, why is sexy bad? Sexy is a thing that a lot of female nerds seem to have a problem with, and I don't really understand it necessarily. I think that a lot of female nerds feel that if you're sexy, that lowers your quality as an individual, and then it's turned into you're stupid or you're worthless or you're an object or a prize or something like that. And I don't really get why sexy characters have to be a thing of, you know, a negative image. Just like with Scooby-Doo, Daphne and Velma, the only two female characters on Scooby-Doo. Daphne is attractive. Velma is the typical, you know, nerd-based girl. Daphne is immediately stupid for some reason, when really Fred is the stupid one. So is Shaggy, and so is Scooby-Doo. But, you know, Velma is also smart, and so is Daphne. They're kind of, you know, both in this whole sleuthing detective thing together. But no one ever talks about Fred being dumb, or Scooby, or Shaggy, who are, you know, all the male characters in the show, and I've always found that really funny. And just to continue on with characters, I think that Princess Peach is a very heavy topic, in this conversation. And I think that Princess Peach, you know, girls tend to think that Princess Peach embodies this object that Mario goes and wins, and she's this empty, ha ha ha, I'm a princess type of thing, and that she's, you know, she has no, you know, she runs a mushroom kingdom, she's a princess, she's one-dimensional. Yeah, she is one-dimensional, but I don't think she's over-sexualized, I don't think she's an object, she's a one-dimensional character. Just like Mario is one-dimensional, just like Bowser is one-dimensional, Yoshi, Luigi, every character in the Mario games are one-dimensional. I don't really see how that, you know, it becomes an argument, or why it becomes an argument, because saying that she's an object, you know, doesn't really prove a point. It proves as much point as saying that any of the other characters are more complex than she is, because they're not. And another character that seems to get a lot of heat, who's one of my personal favorites from childhood, she was one of my biggest idols growing up, and that's Lara Croft, the Tomb Raider. Lara Croft has had so many changes. She's had her character revamped, redesigned, everything. Why? Because she's sexy, or, you know, women think that her breasts are too large, or whatever. Lara Croft is an archaeologist, she's a genius, she's rich, she's independent, she kicks ass, she has guns, she can fight, she is an adventurer. Why do women have a problem with that character representing them? And why do they feel that that character has to represent them as a female? Every character that exists doesn't represent every person in the world. Males have characters, or men have characters, you know, they'll have characters like Ryu, or they'll have characters like Kratos and Dante, Iron Man, all these characters. Men don't have any issues with those characters. They have crazy characters like Rufus, who are huge and crazy. They have characters like Ash from KOF, who's effeminate and kind of looks like a girl. But men still play him. Men play male characters just as much as they play female characters, just as much as they read comic books about male characters or female characters. And I think the whole, you know, making this a debate on that women are more objectified sexually in comic books or video games versus males is silly, because men wear skin-tight costumes just like women do. And I think that a lot of women, from what I've understood, they tend to identify themselves with Wonder Woman, which I find very interesting, because Wonder Woman wears a corset and panties, and she carries a whip, and she she is strong, you know, she is a female empowering character, but how is she more empowering than Tomb Raider? Tomb Raider wears the clothes she wears because she's in the jungle. She wears a tank top and shorts and boots because she's crawling through caves and fighting tigers and bears. I don't think that women, you know, I think that it would be good for women to have input in the development process. And I think that's the problem. Men create female characters because video games and comic books are a fantasy. That is what it's meant for. It's meant for a realm outside of their own lives. And when men create these female characters, no matter how tough they are, no matter how effeminate they are or anything, women always nitpick them and always seem to have a problem with them. There's not one singular character that women can agree on and be like, I like this character. This is the universal female character. And, you know, characters aren't supposed to be like Michelle Obama. They're not supposed to be these people that represent a positive image of everything. And I think that kind of comes down to the fact that women have a problem a lot of the time with making fun of themselves. Women don't understand how to, you know, pick a character that's probably silly or goofy or maybe ditzy and just be okay with that and understand that it's fantasy. A lot of people seem to like Lollipop Chainsaw. That was about a ditzy high school girl, but I've seen a ton of girls cosplay as her. But girls have a problem with Tomb Raider, who's a very empowering, you know, intense female character. It's a lot of conflicting issues with this stuff. And I feel that men will pick big, fat, crazy characters or muscular characters or, you know, a very good example is this guy. Everyone knows who Batman is. I can ask so many guys, you know, oh, how do you like Batman? More likely than not, even if they're a Superman fan or whatever, they'll be like, Batman is awesome. Do you need a reason? Are his clothes too tight? Is he, you know, anything like that? Men don't say any of those things. They say Batman is awesome, regardless of race, regardless of class, whether they're rich, whether they're not, white, black, anything. It doesn't matter. And with women, it turns into a thing of, oh, well, she's not skinny enough, or she's, you know, she's dumb, she's this or that, she's useless, or she's this. But I bet you if there was a fat, or well, there has been a fat female character, a fat princess. I mean, I think that women just have to come to a general consensus of understanding that because something exists, it doesn't represent every woman ever. It can just be a novelty, and, you know, give your input, say these are things that I personally like, these are things I don't like. A lot of the time people just put this into, they ask with using a poll and say, well, what are these things that you might like about this new game coming out or new whatever character being created. And I think that's why it's become a lot more popular for there to be create your own character options in games, because it's become so frustrating trying to create this perfect character when there really isn't one. And just like what I said with men, there's plethoras of male characters in different genres, and men can identify with different characters, whether it be goofy, whether it be silly or anything, you know. And I just think that women just have to get back to understanding how they can positively reinforce ideals that, you know, the industry sets out for them, whether it be comic book characters or video games. The look is probably the most novelty-based thing of all. And I think that ties back into everything from what I said in the beginning. You shouldn't have to look terrible. You shouldn't have to look like Ugly Betty to be necessarily relatable. You shouldn't have to look, thick glasses, frumpy, and all this other stuff. If you like makeup, you like makeup. If you like to do your hair, you like to do your hair. If you like to wear sexy costumes, sure, that's fine. As long as you're not hurting anybody, I don't think it should matter. And I don't think that should take away your credibility as a person, in general, male or female. But I don't think that lack of hygiene should relate you to being a nerd or not. I think that's silly. Probably the biggest thing that I've heard women complain about would probably be breast size. The jiggle option and all, the different stuff, Rumble Roses, Skullgirls, DOA, Mortal Kombat, all of these games and comic books for that matter, they're too sexy because their breasts are large. There's women in the world that have large breasts, and I just think that exists because women like that exist in the world. And every woman, doesn't look like that. People who create these things understand that, but unless you give an option, and actually I've read a lot of comic books where there were girls in them who weren't sexy. They weren't like these sex vixens like Power Girl or something like that. They were just regular looking girls, but no one ever talks about that. They only target the negative images, which is a waste of time because there's countless, there are countless negative images of men, but men tend to just laugh about it and think that it's more amusing. I don't know very many men that look like Dalsim or, like Ryu for that matter, or Dante or Iron Man, any of these characters. But men enjoy that in a way that it is fanfare and that it's fantasy. Just like women should just kind of probably lighten up and not feel so constricted that these images represent them and every woman in the world. So, yeah, I think we pretty much touched on all of the things that have to do with why being sexy is not bad and how it really just comes down to the fact that people just like looking at other sexy things. People like looking at sexy people. That's, on top of things, enjoying a fantasy and being able to live out a fantasy by watching a Marvel movie or reading a comic book or playing a video game, you're doing it because you enjoy it and because it takes you away from your real life. It's a fantasy. That's what it's supposed to be. And if video games were nothing but real life and they just constantly reminded you of real life and comic books constantly reminded you of real life, you wouldn't play them. No one would play them because you were already living your life. And essentially, I feel that when going back to the point just really quick about the whole Princess Peach thing and how, Mario is chasing this object, when that's reversed in film, it's called a romantic comedy. Women love The Notebook and all these other movies that represent that dynamic, getting the girl. But in nerddom, in video games, all these things, it's frowned upon, and it's like, oh, well, that makes her an object. No, it makes her a one-dimensional character, just like Mario. So, yeah, I think that's all I have to say on this topic. And, you just make sure that when you understand and you remember that hate takes a lot of work, but to love somebody is easy. And, take that with you, and I'll see you for my next vlog. Thanks, guys.